Now let's begin by telling you that Nigeria's national grid has collapsed for the third time this week, leaving millions without power. The latest collapse occurred on Saturday morning, with power generation dropping from 3,042 megawatts to just 47 megawatts. The cause of the collapse is currently unknown, as officials from the Transmission Company of Nigeria were unavailable for comment. The development follows two previous grid collapses on Monday and Tuesday, highlighting the country's ongoing struggles with power supply. To security matters now, Nigeria's defense headquarters has reported significant success in operations against terrorists in the northern region. Troops killed 96 terrorists and rescued 157 hostages. In addition, 227 suspects, including a terrorist commander identified as Usman Maisaje, were arrested during the operations. In a statement on Friday, Director of Defense Media Operations Major General Buba Edward said Maisaje was a close associate of high-profile wanted terrorist leader known as Kachala Bokka. He added that the suspect was cooperating and providing troops with crucial intelligence for further operations. Troops also recovered stolen crude oil valued at over 712 million naira and arrested suspected oil thieves in the South-South region. Meanwhile, the federal government has said that the Nigerian military requires more satellites to enhance internal security. The permanent secretary of the Ministry of Defense, Ibrahim Kana, made the statement at a stakeholders forum during the Nigerian Satellite Week, organized by the Nigerian Communications Satellite Limited in Abuja, under the theme, Harnessing Communication Satellites for Sustainable Development. Kana highlighted that satellites are crucial for addressing certain military operational challenges, aiding communication, and monitoring movement across various areas. The permanent secretary noted that the Defense Space Administration has the capability to capture satellites imagery of routes used by troops, enhancing operations and reducing casualties. Now to discuss this, we're joined by Chidi Omeje, a security expert. Mr. Chidi, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, Mr. Chidi, what specific intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities are currently lacking in the Nigerian military's operations, and how would additional satellites actually address these gaps? Now, moving on, Nigeria's Federal Ministry of Education has honored the Borno State government with the Most Performing State in Education Award 2024. The Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Mamman, says Borno government needs to be commended for its giant stride towards improving the education sector as it recovers from insurgency. News Central's Umaru Kirawa completes the report.
A state recovering from the years of insurgency and the recent September 10th flood disaster. The educational sector is one of the worst hit and now gradually picking up from the ashes of conflict and the recent flood. National Council on Education, the highest decision-making body for education in Nigeria, honored Borno alongside Enugu and Ebonyi states.
We have done very much in spite of our challenges. Borno State has moved forward, and that is why we are getting this recognition nationally. And I would like to urge the Honorable Mr. Commissioner of Education and those of us that are supporting him to tighten our belt to see that we work tirelessly to be getting more of these recognitions.
We still have our challenges, and believe me, they are not unsurmountable. So I'm happy that we are recognized by the highest apex body of education in Nigeria. We intend to do more and strive more. I'm happy as part of the resolutions, the federal government has included skills in our schools.
This recognition, according to the state government, has further renewed its commitment to tackle the menace of out-of-school children and strengthen the ministry's efforts towards excellence.
Our first 5 mega schools were all technical schools, and the concept of relevant technology, where the child of the less privileged could continue schooling self-reliantly by knowing 1 or 2 skills, was brought into the state system by His Excellency since 2019. The federal government is just bringing it. But 5 years ago, we thought of this and we started implementing. I am sure by the time the Federal Ministry of Education assesses this very, very seriously next year, we will receive more commendation.
The challenge now for the government is tackling the menace of the out-of-school children who roam the streets in search for survival. Experts say engaging them in the vocational training centers established by the government will go a long way in getting them set for the future, which only time can tell. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
We now go back to our previous conversation with Mr. Omeje on the importance of satellites as they're needed in Nigerian internal security. Mr. Chidi, you're welcome back. My apologies there from before, but now that you're here, let's get to answering that question I earlier posed regarding what we lack in Nigerian military, as the Nigerian military, and how improving this could, what format this could take.
Yeah. Yes, I was going to say that Nigeria, our military's inability to gather and analyze intelligence real time has always been a big issue. So our ISR capability is something that we must be intentional about, because technology-driven approach is always best at times like in this kind of war we're fighting. So I expect the government, I expect the military to prioritize this capability, because it will to radically transform their ability to monitor, to track, and indeed neutralize the adversaries. So that's what I was trying to make, the point I was trying to make before the network went awry.
Okay. Well, Chidi, are there examples that you could point to that could show how this has helped other places, like perhaps maybe places with conflicts, where satellite inclusion has been of the advantage?
Absolutely. Look at, for instance, what's happening in Israel. Israel's what they call OFEC satellite system has always been the one. This is not me trying to justify or talk about the morality or otherwise of military Israel's Gaza issue, but they've been able to use satellite to track most of the adversaries, those they consider their adversaries. That's why it was easy for them to pinpoint where the Nasrallahs, this current one they killed the other day. So it's always been the satellite-aided ISR capability. So Israel has shown that how possible it is. In America, for instance, they have equally deployed their own, U.S. military satellite communication expertise to be able to pinpoint, the real-time movement of the adversary. So Nigeria should be able to, go beyond just, deploying the foot on the ground, but to leverage technology.
Well, unfortunately, we've lost connection again with Mr. Chidi Omeje, but I'm sure that we'll be able to bring him on another of our bulletins. Let's go on a break now, and when we come back, according to the World Bank, 129 million Nigerians are living in poverty. When we return. And you're welcome back. The World Bank has released the Nigeria Development Update Report, stating that over 129 million Nigerians are currently trapped in poverty. It released the report in Abuja as headline inflation rises, forcing millions of Nigerians into hunger. According to the global financial body, the over 129 million Nigerians represented a sharp rise from 40.1% in 2018 to 56% in 2024. Since 2018, the share of Nigerians living below the national poverty line is estimated to have risen sharply from 40.1% to 56%. According to the report, there was an increase from 150 million in 2023 to 129 million in 2024, which means that 14 million Nigerians have become poorer this year. The Washington-based bank attributed the surge to inflation, poor economic management, and external shock. And to discuss this further, I'm joined by Inyabong Essen, Head Research and Policy Advisor, Budget. Inyabong, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. So how do you think the Nigerian government can reverse the trend of rising poverty and achieve macroeconomic stability, especially considering the recent reforms and their impact on household and firms?
I mean, this question has many answers, as you know, but I'll pick it apart a bit within the time frame that we have. As you know, I mean, with the World Bank report, it says, the leading cause of poverty as it is that not only do you not have enough people employed or in their employment, but it's also that the persons who are employed are not employed in productive jobs, meaning that even though you have people working, they are earning very minimal wages that, is not sufficient enough to cater to their lifestyle. And so what you have is general increase in the prices of goods and services with very stagnant income. And so what it means is the government has to tackle inflation head on. If you look at the NBS statistics, with the last release on the headline inflation, and you see what contributes to the basket of inflation, you see that food is very high on the agenda. And you go to the markets with the price of a bag of rice now going for almost 120,000 naira for the long grain. You look at the price of other staple commodities, and you see that this is completely out of the reach, of the ordinary man. If you look at also the price of energy, as the case may be, PMS, virtually everybody in the country at the moment, depends on that product for survival, whether it's for transportation, whether it's for powering their small businesses. This is a product that we have come to rely on. And with the price of the commodity now going for over 1,000 naira, the operating cost of small businesses have increased, leading them to also increase the cost of the goods and services that they offer. And you see that persons who would often consume these commodities have drastically reduced the consumption, of course, which has contributed to a decline in productivity generally. And so that's one area that I think that we need to really look into. I know that over the medium to long term, it's important that that very expensive petroleum subsidy that we have funded inefficiently for a very long time needs to go. But then just taking it out like that without, providing palliative to cushion the effect of that removal is one area where government has not done, pretty well. If you look at the other factor as well that contributes also to pricing, which is the exchange rate, in that we're an import-dependent economy, the exchange rate at 1.6 has also driven the price of a lot of commodities and services. That's one area too that needs a lot of stability. And as you know, the exchange rate is largely dependent on what you have in your reserves. And for us to be able to grow our reserves, we have to be export-oriented. What's happening in that sector? There's very little that Nigeria exports with regards to non-oil exports. A large chunk of what we export is petroleum. For non-oil, whether it's with regards to agricultural products, whether it's regards to services, there's still a lot with regards to...
You just touched on a bit there. Inyabong, now you just touched on something very critical here when you talked about agriculture, and I'll come to that in a bit. But the World Bank just reportedly told that we need productive jobs. Now, this might fall on the private sector, but those jobs are not even available. What other option is there for Nigeria to help create jobs? Would it be agriculture? I ask.
So I would take it away from agriculture a bit, because for prospects, we see that services, manufacturing are where there's a real tendency to, really create productive jobs. And, those jobs will be able to pay wages to help people afford, the cost of living as the case may be. Agriculture, as you know, over, the past period, without value addition, has not been one sector that has provided living wages for persons, active in that sector. So I'd like the focus to be on manufacturing services. And with manufacturing, of course, with a number of manufacturing firms that have closed over the last couple of months, or the last 2 years as the case may be, as a result of a number of issues. These are areas that government needs to look at. So if you look at manufacturing, access to infrastructure for one, look at power. Over the last 3 days, the national grid has collapsed twice. I mean, from this morning, there has been no power almost across the length and breadth of the Federation, meaning that a lot of these manufacturing firms that depend on the grid will have to go off grid and purchase diesel at very high cost. This has significant a significant impact on their bottom line, and then the cost of goods and services that they would provide at the end of the day. If you look at access to raw material as well, we have not been able to also grow other sectors. If you look at the steel sector, for instance, you look at the Jakarta steel industry, successive governments have not been able to revive that industry. They have not also been able to concession it for us to be able to maximize the gains of that sector so that they can provide adequate raw material for manufacturing to thrive. If you look at taxation also, for instance, that's also one area where the manufacturing firms complain a lot that there's a lot that, that they lose to multiple taxation. But one of the good things that this government has done is to set up that presidential fiscal and tax reform committee that has made very good proposals to, help the manufacturing sector, whether it's with regards to reduction in CIT from 30% to 25%, whether it's with regards to the VAT reforms and the sort of import for firms to be able to get input credit and all of that. But if you look at other kinds of infrastructure that sector depends on, I mean, roads is one big thing. That's one area too where government has fallen short.
Okay.
The roads are extremely bad. If you are going to be transporting goods from whether it's Jigawa in the north or you are transporting goods from anywhere in the middle belt with regards to agricultural products, the cost of transportation has been greatly increased because of the roads. If the trucks are not breaking down due to bad roads, there are goods that are getting spoiled with regards to perishable goods. So road infrastructure is one area as well that needs to prioritize so that from farm to market, there's that ease of transportation for goods.
All right, Iniobong. You took my third question and you answered it regarding policies and processes by the government. But thank you very much, Iniobong, for spending your time here and giving your views on the matter.
Yeah, thanks for having me and have a lovely afternoon.
You too, thank you. Now, in the meantime, the recent commemoration of the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty worldwide holds deep significance for Nigeria, where over 133 million people are multidimensionally poor, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. The World Bank and UNICEF therefore call on the government to take urgent steps to safeguard the vulnerable, particularly the children, while tackling the root causes of poverty in the country. Now, News Central's Omolola Ololade has more on this report.
In Nigeria, many people are living in extreme poverty, many of whom work in the informal economy, unregistered, unrecognized and unprotected under labor legislation, facing difficult and dangerous conditions. Despite working long hours, they are unable to earn enough to support themselves and their families, especially as the recent hike in the pump price of petrol and the prevailing food supply challenges have only worsened the situation.
My husband's salary is collecting 65,000. So imagine 65,000 cannot buy a bag of rice. And we have 4 children that are in school. We can't even pay their school fees. Life in Nigeria is terrible.
You will not believe it that I parked my car around Towing Street and I had to trek down to Alausa and I will have to trek back. I can't afford to bring the car here and drive the car back there. That's how it has affected me.
My children they are not going to school anymore because I don't have money to afford their school fees. Even the one in university drop out. I asked because I don't have money.
Economists, however, warn that the number of Nigerians below the poverty line may soon exceed the 104 million projected by the World Bank, leaving about 40.7 Nigerians living below the international poverty line by the end of 2024. Of the 104 million Nigerians living in poor conditions, about 40 million children are affected by severe hunger, hence the call on the government to take urgent action to protect the future generation.
Today's fiscal, monetary and exchange rate reforms are hurting everyone, especially ordinary Nigerians who are struggling with the high prices of food and transport. The government must do everything in its power to protect the most vulnerable citizens against hardships because their lives and the lives of Nigeria's 110 million children depend on it.
Is an economically rational decision. It's not a cherry on the cake. It is an essential part of the recipe of economic transformation to make sure that children are healthy, that they're educated, that they are equipped, but also, and this is an important part for the future of Nigeria with a very young population, that they're skilled with green and digital skills that will actually land them a job.
While the government agreed that the people are going through hardship as a result of its economic reforms, the country's Minister of Finance and Economy assured Nigerians of plans to make food available and accessible for all its citizens.
To ensure that what remains of the wet season harvest with climate change, the wet season has sort of moved slightly, as well as the dry season harvest is successful, does produce bountiful food, which will reduce the cost of food and make it more available and affordable and bring down the rate of inflation.
Nigeria's development ambition to end poverty by 2030 is navigated in the context of sluggish growth, low human capital, labor market weaknesses, among others. Achieving the ambitious target to lift all of its people out of poverty in the next 6 years is what critical stakeholders say is not realistic. In Lagos for News Central, I am Omolola Ololade.
Away from that, Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has approved 85,000 naira as the new minimum wage for civil servants employed by the Rivers State government. The agreement was reached during a closed-door meeting presided over by the governor and attended by representatives of organized labor under the Joint Public Service Negotiating Council at the Government House in Port Harcourt on Friday. Briefing journalists after the meeting, the head of the Rivers State Civil Service, George Mwaike, who spoke on behalf of the government, confirmed that the governor had approved the new minimum wage of 85,000 naira, adding that implementation will begin in November 2024.
He has pronounced a figure that is higher than the national minimum wage. He pronounced a sum of 85,000 naira, which is higher than the minimum wage that was prescribed nationally. So as the head of service and a major stakeholder in the labor family, I'm very happy that the Rivers State civil servants have never had it this good since the inception of this state. And that is why we are very happy today, the labor union leaders and all the other major stakeholders, we are happy with this development.
For governor to come against all the crises, against all the things he's facing, against the revenue and not the rest of them, to say he will pay 85,000 naira minimum wage.
Now, still in Rivers State, Governor Siminalayi Fubara says one of the greatest reassurances emboldening his administration is the immense support that the people of Rivers State have continued to offer unreservedly. The governor stressed that this support is reflected in the words, actions and pledges of loyalty and solidarity from royal fathers and other well-meaning individuals in the state. He made these remarks during a post-election solidarity visit by members of the Rivers State Traditional Rulers Council, led by their chairman, His Majesty Eze Chike Warluwodo, at the Government House in Port Harcourt on Friday. Fubara noted that although he was aware of their support through their actions in their domains, their visit serves as a tangible declaration of their readiness to provide steadfast backing to his administration.
Election has come, election has gone. It is only God that made it possible. It is not myself, neither our calculation. It is God that made it work that way. So we return all thanks to God and God alone. I will assure you that as a government, we will continue to respect this institution. We will not do anything within our power, directly or indirectly, knowingly or unknowingly, to undermine any of you. If we have wronged you in any way, let me say sorry here.
Nigerian youths have called on political parties to leverage their competence in advancing a youth agenda for Nigeria. Now, this was during a public policy conversation in the nation's capital, Abuja, which targeted selected young leaders across political parties in the country. News Central's Joshua Marai has the details.
The United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs says that Nigeria's population will exceed 400 million persons by 2050, with 70% of its population under 30 years and 42% under 15. Despite these significant figures, there are still challenges in establishing adequate infrastructure to support large-scale youth development. To effectively engage young people as key players in promoting and advancing youth agenda, stakeholders say the importance of harnessing the potential of young leaders within political parties is necessary.
We've not really talked about using political parties to push the youth agenda, and on recognizing that, we said that the best way to do is to have a conversation around how we can use the resources we have, meaning young people within political parties as leaders, either as elected members, either as appointed members, or even just members of the political parties, to put them into a cross-cutting, you could say, social coalition that would together find a way to channel and chart a new course for youth development in Nigeria.
As discussions on youth engagement and advancing the youth agenda continues, some stakeholders say introducing independent candidacies could help diversify citizens' options.
Independent candidacy is something we might need to try, because we've been into this party system for a very long time, and we are where we are today. But then I believe that if we do something different, we might be able to see different results in terms of independent candidacy, introducing independent candidates in our political system.
They, however, add that for independent candidacy to thrive, there must be urgent institutional reforms.
These independent persons, no matter how brilliant they are, no matter how accountable they are still going to operate within the existing structure. And therefore it is important we begin to talk about how to strengthen our institutions rather than individuals.
Some stakeholders also urge young Nigerians to actively participate in grassroots politics while leveraging social media for political activism and campaigning.
Social media is good, is a tool for dissemination of information, but most times the world does not end in a keypad. Being a keypad warrior is one thing, and being on the field to do the job, walk the talk, is another thing.
As the call for government to view young people as partners rather than mere beneficiaries of initiatives gain traction, some stakeholders say that youth hold immense potentials to drive meaningful change in the country. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Marai.
The Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics in Plateau State, North Central Nigeria, has announced its decision not to go back on their resolve joining the national body in the ongoing 15-day National Industrial Action, which began October 7, 2024. According to the union's Zone B coordinator, Simji Lumpie, the decision to embark on the strike stems from the government's failure to fulfill its mandate regarding the development of tertiary education in Nigeria. In a press briefing in Jos, Lumpie said the impunity and disregard for the Federal Polytechnic Act, among other issues, prompted the ultimatum.
Disrespects the sustained reports of impunity and disrespect of clear provisions of the Federal Polytechnic Act, different edicts establishing state-owned institutions, and other instruments of governance in the sector, particularly as it affects appointments of principal officers in federal and state-owned institutions, as well as other items of governance in polytechnics. 2, non-review of the contentious and suspended document titled Scheme of Service for Polytechnics and the non-release of conditions of service. Pursuant to our resolve to continue to advocate for functional polytechnic and monotechnic education system in the country, our union hereby issues a 15-day ultimatum as required by law, which commenced on the 7th of October 2024 to proprietors of public polytechnics for these items to be addressed or face different forms of trade disputes.
And you're welcome back. Now, the government of Gabon has announced that a referendum on a new constitution will be held on the 16th of November. The new constitution is intended to transition the country to a civilian regime following the military coup that ended the 55-year rule of former President Ali Bongo Ondimba's family. The proposed constitution includes several key changes, such as the abolition of the post of prime minister and the introduction of a 7-year presidential term, which can be renewed once. The Council of Ministers has expressed satisfaction with the completion of the proposed new constitution, and the next step will be the organization of a constitutional referendum.
Le Conseil des ministres a exprimé sa satisfaction concernant l'aboutissement du projet de nouvelle constitution. Cette étape décisive a permis au gouvernement de la transition, au CTRI et au Parlement de la transition d'examiner de manière approfondie les amendements proposés par les parlementaires de la transition réunis en constituante. Après le succès du dialogue national inclusif, la prochaine étape décisive du processus de transition sera l'organisation.
In Central Africa, the Economic Community of Central African States is holding a summit in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. Gabon's transitional president, Brice Oligui, is attending for the first time since Gabon rejoined the group in March 2024. ECCAS has suspended Gabon following a coup in 2023 that ousted President Ali Bongo. The summit presents an opportunity for Gabon to reconnect with neighboring countries and address regional issues. Now, President Oligui his attendance is seen as a positive sign for Gabon's future role in the region. Now, Kamala Harris has raised concerns about Donald Trump's fitness for office, citing his recent cancellations of interviews and debates. She noted that Trump has been appearing on friendly television networks but has withdrawn from sit-downs with other media outlets, prompting speculations about his health and stamina. Harris said if Trump is already showing signs of exhaustion on the campaign trail, it raises serious questions about whether he is fit for what is considered the toughest job in the world.
And now he is ducking debates and canceling interviews. Come on. And check this out. His own campaign team recently said it is because of exhaustion. Well, if you are exhausted on the campaign trail, it raises real questions about whether you are fit for the toughest job in the world. Come on. And on top of this, Donald Trump intends to end the Affordable Care Act, okay? And has no plan to replace it. You watched the debate. So you remember? He has, quote, concepts of a plan. Concepts of a plan. He who calls Americans who disagree with him the enemy from within. You know where that language comes from? The enemy from within, talking about Americans. He who says he would use the military to go after them, American citizens. He who has called for the, quote, termination of the
Now, Britain's Foreign Secretary David Lammy has called for deeper diplomatic engagement between the UK and China as he concluded his visits to the country. Both nations are seeking to reset relations, which have been strained by China's security measures in Hong Kong and concerns over human rights abuses in the Xinjiang region. Lammy met with China's Director of Foreign Affairs Commission Office and Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Laos, where they discussed the UK's stance on UK-China relations and addressed global issues, including climate change. The two sides agreed to work towards establishing long-term communication channels.
It's very important for me to be here in China just after 100 days in government. UK policy in the past under the last government was not consistent. And what I'm hearing, this was the beginning of a process. This was my second meeting with Wang Yi. We'll meet again next year. And of course, it has been important to restart dialogue between the UK government and the Chinese government in so many areas. Let's be clear, there are values areas where the UK government and our cultural approach will be different to China's, and there are important areas of national security where we will always put the UK national interests first. I believe what you need is more diplomacy, not less. That's why it's so important.
And now sports. In a thrilling all-Nigerian final, Muiz Adegoke and Abdul Basit Abdul Fatai emerged as the new African champions in men's double table tennis, clinching victory at the ITTF Africa Champions in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The duo triumphed over their compatriots Olajide Omotayo and Kuti Matthew in a nail-biting match that ended with a close 3-2 scoreline, showcasing the depth of talent within Nigerian table tennis. Adegoke and Abdul Fatai their win marks a significant achievement for Nigeria, especially following earlier setbacks in other categories. And the Nigerian Rugby League has extended invitations to players of Nigerian heritage based in Australia and New Zealand who may be interested in joining the national women's team for the World Cup qualifiers in 2025. Nigeria recently secured victory in the World Cup qualifier for the Africa and Middle East region and are set to advance to the World Series, which is scheduled to take place in the latter half of 2025. To this end, the Nigerian Rugby League has developed a pathway program for players to join the team. To be eligible to represent Nigeria, players must meet at least one of the following criteria: born in Nigeria or hold a Nigerian passport, have Nigerian citizens' parents, have Nigerian citizen grandparents, or have lived in Nigeria for more than 5 years. And Red Bull's Max Verstappen took pole position for the sprint race at the United States Grand Prix, with title rival Lando Norris fourth in the McLaren. Verstappen, who heads Norris by 52 points with 6 races to go, pipped Mercedes driver George Russell to pole position by 0.012 seconds in Austin. Ferrari's Charles Leclerc was third fastest with 0.226 seconds, slower than Verstappen, and Norris was 0.25 seconds off the pace in fourth. Mercedes driver Lewis Hamilton was seventh, splitting the Haas driver Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen. Norris' teammate Oscar Piastri was knocked out in the first session because his lap time was deleted for exceeding track limits at the penultimate corner and will start the sprint 16th. And in boxing, Francis Ngannou weighed in 5 pounds lighter than Renan Ferreira for their heavyweight bout at PFL Superfight in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on today. Ngannou weighed 265 pounds compared to Ferreira's 261 for the clash the organization is dubbing the Battle of the Giants. Cameroon's Ngannou is competing in MMA for the first time in nearly 3 years after leaving the UFC 22 months ago. Since then, he has boxed against Britain's Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, becoming one of the biggest combat sports stars in the world. Brazil's Ferreira, 34, won the PFL Annual Global League in 2023 and is on a 4-fight winning streak. And that's all the news this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories that we brought your way. Millions of Nigerians face blackout as national grid collapses for the 3rd time in 1 week. And troops kill 96 terrorists, arrest 227 suspects in operations in northern Nigeria. Gabon to hold referendum on new constitution on 16th of November. Now do remember, you can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Able TV, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.